I had to meet with the job force counselor, and he's looking at my resume. He's just like, why are you here? And I'm literally about to cry again. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea why I'm here, but I'm here, and I'm, not in school right now. I got to get a job. And he was just like, okay. If you've ever done sales before, I sold a couple lip glosses for Amway. He's like, okay. So what turned out to be a crazy situation, his wife was HR recruiting at a mortgage company. It was Freedom Mortgage. They had a program, and he sent her my resume. I had an interview and got hired. Yeah. That's how this started. Giving me attention. I think they're making me lose, and you need those, and the beat that pump I want.
So welcome to another episode of the Pepper Soup Talk Show. My name is Aki, here with my partner Sekou. We've got a very special guest with us today. She's, I'm going to call her the Mortgage John. She has on her shirt.
That's the Mortgage John.
Mortgage John.
I like it.
So our guest today, she has a very special story. And when she first told me about her experiences and what her journey has been, I was extremely inspired, and we're excited to share that story with you guys today. She has a brand, Medicine to Mortgages.
Medicine to Mortgages, yes.
She's a prolific mortgage professional.
Thank you.
She does residential and commercial mortgages. And in the time that we're in right now, being in 2023, it's a tumultuous economic climate. We hear about talks with interest rates going up and down, and so if you're someone who's interested in real estate, interested in purchasing a property, definitely want to call her, and you want to tune into this conversation to hear about kind of what the housing market, especially when it comes to lending, is like to be able to secure a mortgage loan. And while doing that, you're going to hear a lot about her story and kind of how she has come to be who she is today. And so, without further ado, Miss Elizabeth Parris. Parris.
I know, so it's a tricky Caribbean thing. No H. No
so
H.
Paris.
But there's an H at the end of your name.
No.
Oh, there isn't?
No, but so it's funny. Sorry, hi, Elizabeth Parris. But so the funny thing about my last name, because of the origin, it's British in origin. But because of the landscape of the Caribbean, people often think there's a H. A lot of times there are parishes. In the Caribbean, and also like in Ireland and some parts of like England, but no H.
Got you.
It happens often, actually.
All right, well, I won't make that mistake again.
I told you, we're about grace. Right?
So Miss Elizabeth Parris, we'd like to welcome you to the Pepper Soup Talk Show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, gentlemen, for shooting out the invite. Y'all know you and I have talked a lot about finance and real estate in the past. So I'm humbled. Thank you.
No, we're very, very happy and honored to have you on the show. And so if we could start from the beginning of Elizabeth and
this journey.
Yeah, where it all started for you. Can you talk a little bit about your background and where you come from?
I can. So just from a culture standpoint, I'm Caribbean American. I was born in DC. My family's from St. Vincent, St. Kitts, and as well as Trinidad. So I'm kind of a little Caribbean combo. Grew up in the DMV. Made my way to the Philly, Jersey area for grad school. I never left. And then I finally got really settled and planted some roots here in Philly. So I get to embrace the John that comes along with Philly. But I also have a running joke from my friends who are from Philly. They call me the honorary John. I'm not organic. I wasn't born here, but I love Philly. I love the culture. And it's like a good happy medium. So that's life, where I'm from. But if we want to talk career, the Medicine to Mortgages part is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, it gets very, very interesting. Your story, I feel, is so unique, and it's a story that I think a lot of people can learn from. Also,
Agreed. So I wish that having to transition careers from medicine to something else was that unique. It's actually not. People just don't talk about it. For a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
And it took me a little while to get to a space where I got comfortable talking. I was like, you know what, this is the thing. This is the journey. This is where we are. So why not use it?
Yeah.
Right. So my Instagram page is medicine, the number 2 mortgages. Of course, that's a drop. Follow me.
Yeah.
But the reason why I said that is because, you know what, I started off in the medical field. That's okay. You're not as good as an immigrant, child of immigrants.
Yeah.
You have 4 options, right? You know, doctor, lawyer, engineer, or fuck up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
That's correct. That's right.
So I went for doctor.
Yeah.
Right.
And I did get into medical school, which is, you know, it's a tough process to just get in.
Yeah.
Apply. You spend a lot of your life, if you have friends who are physicians, that's your whole life, really, you know, elementary school, middle school, everything's focused on becoming a doctor.
And to rewind on that too, you're a Princeton grad, aren't you?
Hopkins. Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want to gloss over that either, because like, you know, it's just
student loans are still there, so yeah.
Yeah.
I still got student loans, so don't gloss over it. Put it on the resume.
Right.
I am a Hopkins grad. I graduated there with my bachelor's in psych.
Yeah. Word.
Yeah.
Now I cut you off, so I mean,
you're good. So that whole process of getting into medical school, that's a long, arduous journey, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of life denial. Actually, you know, you're really focused on obtaining the goal. Took me about 6 years from graduating undergrad, doing a couple postbacks, getting a master's, to get into medical school. Got there, hated it. Hated it. And not so much because of it's hard. There's so much politics within medicine and becoming a medical physician that there's sometimes not a lot of supports in place, particularly when you are first generation as well. So if you don't have any doctors in your family, you're learning a lot of the who to talk to, lingo, things of that nature, to kind of succeed. And if you can't make it, they're not very forgiving with that. At least the school I went to at the time, they shall remain nameless. They weren't very big on supports. They actually still struggle to this day with proper supports for particularly minority students as well. So unfortunately, I did 2 years. I failed a course. I appealed my failure, but they denied it and told me I was dismissed. Yeah.
Sounds ruthless.
Well, if we're talking 6 years from undergrad to get into medical school, we're talking a bachelor's, a post-bac, a master's. We're talking plenty of time in high school. This is the only thing that I'm focused on.
Right.
That is the majority of my life. Gone with one exam. Gone. And I appealed it, and it, you know, kind of brushed it off like, you know, maybe you just weren't ready. And it's like, I am not young. I'm late 20s, early 30s at this point. I'm ready. I just need different supports to get through this. So that was a really hard hit to take. And then to tell your Caribbean parents, hey, I'm not going to be a doctor.
So what was that? What was that like for you?
Well, mom was like, okay, well, is there a plan? What's the plan? And at the time I was still trying to go back. And dad was just kind of like, oh crap. Because my dream is really his dream, right?
Right.
So he's devastated. He's not saying it, but I know he's devastated to the point where, like, usually it's update the family, what's going on. This man got silent about everything in regards to my updates. If I asked about, hey, what's going on with Liz in school? How's she doing? She's like, oh, she's all right. I'm just like, I'm not in school, sir. I'm trying to figure it out, but I'm not in school. So it's rough because you want to make your parents and your family proud. Everybody's excited of it because it's the prestige. You're gonna be a physician. You're gonna be a doctor in the family. I'm excited. And then
they're probably already telling people you're a doctor.
Yes. I was already doctor at this point. White folk pictures are out.
That was the conversation at the dinner table, right?
That was it. Everyone's like, oh, you're done with school. You're gonna be a doctor. When do you graduate? And I think that was the hardest part, is recognizing, okay, I just failed. But I just failed in a major way, and I didn't get a second chance. And I have peers who got a second chance. I didn't get that second chance. And then the other part of it is Now I have to figure out what am I doing with my life?
Right.
Because they're like, well, take these courses again. But as I've said, like in my own recount of it, having to remain in a space where you just failed to still try to fight through when you didn't have the supports to get through in the first place. And now you're asking me to repeat all the coursework I previously aced in the master's to prove to you something I know I can do. That's a lot of mental, like, and emotional turmoil because like, we're talking, hours of studying, taking in massive amounts of information, knowing you understand it, but hey, it comes down to, can you take this test?
Right.
Most physicians are not test takers. They're not. They're good. A lot of them are good at what they do, but some of the best physicians I know were not top students. But they're great physicians, and that's the difference. So,
right. So, like, this was in your 20s, right?
So let's say early 30s. I'm
early 30s. Okay.
Young, but I'm elderly.
Why do you consider this moment, like, this sort of moment in your life, like, as a failure?
Because it was. It was a huge one for me. I want to be a doctor since I was 5. I can pull the birthday pictures of me holding the doctor's kit, smiling ear to ear. I remember the first time I met Ben Carson. I remember reading Gifted Hands at a young age because my brother got it as a reading assignment. I picked the book up and read it myself. You know what I mean? So it felt like a failure because this was the goal I wanted. I got to medical school, but I wanted to be the physician. I wanted to be the doctor. I wanted to be my community. I wanted to be able to give back in a way that was meaningful, in a way that I thought was the way I need to give back. So to do all that work, to have all that sacrifice, and it to come down to an exam, devastated.
Right. I mean, the reason why I'm asking because Liv is, I think we all like first generations, like immigrants. Like I'm assuming you were the first one in your family. So
yes,
growing up with that, well, your parents having these high expectations, like you said, you want to live your dad's dreams. I just wanted to our listeners to kind of really understand what this was like for you on an emotional level as well.
Gotcha.
And how you were able to actually like, what are some things that you feel like you could share with us for those who are like first generations, like immigrants who really wanted to live this dream, but then they hit this sort of roadblock or they realize like this dream is not for me. Like, what would you say to them?
So in regards to the failure, I would say it was like being in a 30-year marriage and getting divorced and never being told why you're getting a divorce. Just being told, hey, I don't love you anymore. Spouse is up and left, right?
Wow.
That's how it felt. Because that's how I spent my entire life, was dedicated to that. So once I'm a fighter. I'm absolutely a fighter. So if you tell me something's not possible, I'm like, nope, there's got to be a way. So I'm making all the phone calls, talking to all the physicians I know, sorority sisters, everyone, like, what's my next course of action? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? When it got to the point that I just emotionally couldn't continue taking the same exams and being in the same space where I'm not being supported and watching my peers move forward, that was my rock bottom. That was it. That's when I probably laid out on at that time, my apartment floor in just full tears, like, I'm not going to be a doctor and I don't know how to figure this out. Gave up my apartment, moved in with a friend, had no job, had no income, because at this point you give up work. You give up any references. I hadn't worked for 2 years. So what job am I going back to? But also, can I go back to the job where I just told them, hey, I'm starting medical school. I'm going to be a doctor. I'll be back. Because I worked in the hospital. I'll be back to rotate as a med student. Didn't happen. So everything in my life was built around was becoming a physician. That's gone now. That's it. That's what I said. 30-year marriage. That's it. It's gone. I got nothing. I got stuck with the mortgage. So what I will say helped me, I'm an avid person of mental health. So I went to therapy. So we started therapy. Had difficulty paying for it at first. But I definitely started going to therapy to work through grief and loss. When you fail at something that's like a life goal and you've had everyone invested in this goal and I was invested into it as well. That's it. That's just like, well, what do I do with the rest of my life? What's my purpose? And in the midst of kind of working that through in therapy, I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where So I ended up having to go on food stamps. So a lot of people don't realize if you don't have work, you don't have income, that's it. I'm on food stamps at the time I was living in Camden, New Jersey.
Wow.
And with Camden, their rule is, hey, if you're on food stamps, you have to go to workforce training. So if you want to talk about a humbling experience, is being in a room where you have 2 degrees,
Wow.
2.5, and I'm sitting in the room and I'm just here for workforce training.
Wow.
Because I have to keep food stamps.
Right.
Because I got to find a job. But I was just in school for 2 years. So
Yeah, wow.
what references am I pulling from? Okay, so we're with me now.
Right. Yeah, we appreciate you.
Yeah,
you really painted a picture for us.
Really, like you're doing it, and also thank you for your vulnerability, because I know this is not easy.
Therapy. Lots of therapy. And my therapist is very well paid. Shout out to you. I'm gonna probably send her this link later. But that part of it that's also part of the whole journey. Like I'm sitting in workforce development, downtown Camden, sitting in a room, with clients that I probably would have worked with because I wanted to be a psychiatrist. And I'm sitting here literally like.
And this is Camden, New Jersey.
Camden, New Jersey.
Wow. And I know exactly what you're talking about because I work in Camden, New Jersey. And so, wow, like I know exactly what you mean. Like what a humbling experience.
And it's just like, okay. I had to meet with the job force counselor, and he's looking at my resume. He's just like, why are you here? And I'm literally about to cry again. Like, I have no idea. I have no idea why I'm here, but I'm here and I'm, not in school right now. I got to get a job. And he was just like, okay. If you've ever done sales before, I sold a couple lip glosses for Amway. He's like, okay. So what turned out to be a crazy situation, his wife was HR recruiting at a mortgage company. It was Freedom Mortgage. They had a program, and he sent her my resume. I had an interview and got hired. Yeah. That's how this started.
That's how this lane. Yeah.
That's how this started. I took a chance. I was like, I have nothing else to lose.
And we were talking about before off air, like we were talking a little bit about just like the idea of pivoting, right? And one of the reasons why I think your story is powerful is because, and I've listened to your podcast episodes that they put out, and like we've had our conversations off air, but the idea that there are different ways to like live out your purpose in life, and you've been able to achieve that through the lane that you're in now, which is not different than, as far as like living out your purpose, not different than the lane that you had come from.
It's I put it as like, I was so fixated on, and I didn't know. I had a group of skill sets. I've always been good with people. Yeah. Literally doing, because I worked in inpatient, outpatient psych with children and adolescents. So that's where my basis is. It's in mental health, right? Yeah. So I'm constantly working with kids, assessing their situation, giving them direction. Some adults, some teenagers as well. So I've always said, one of the things I'm big on is I was so fixated on this is the way in which I'm supposed to enact my purpose. I didn't realize that it was a completely different vehicle where I could still do it. Right. My focus was on, hey, I really want to help my community, help them with their mental health. Come to find out, finance is one of the biggest stressors of our community. Like finance and real estate and housing stability is a huge stressor. So no, I'm not prescribing the meds. I'm not doing therapy in this traditional sense that I was, but now I'm in a space where I get to help people reassess their finances in order to be able to buy a home so that they have a place to raise their family. And that is so valuable because it keeps you from bouncing around from house to house. And then your kids being in an unstable situation. So it's like, I don't now have to meet your children in the inpatient unit. I get to help your children stay out of it because they now have a house and a bed to sleep in. That's what's been crazy to me about being able to pivot from, I was in medical school to be a psychiatrist to, well, now I do finance and I help people like fix their finances in a way so that they can actually build proper wealth and have better mental health, actually. Yeah,
no, definitely. And when I think about the mortgage industry and real estate in some ways, I feel like there isn't as much of like one blueprint of like, okay, step A, step B, step C. It's a a lot of figuring it out, or finding the right mentorship if you're lucky, or it's a lot of trial and error.
Yes.
And whereas in some other spaces, it's more cut and dry.
It's a mix.
Yeah.
It's a mix. I would say all fields require mentorship.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because of the history of a lot of these fields, because they're very white dominated spaces, very white male dominated spaces, it's challenging as a minority to find proper mentorship sometimes and support. So I'm excited when I find good mentors, and I've had good mentors who weren't Black as well.
Yeah.
But I'm super excited when I'm like, oh, you Black, we do lending? Oh, you want to drop gems? Let's talk. Let's rap a little bit. Let's exchange, thoughts and ways to move forward. Because for me, I'm always going to be people first. Yeah. No matter what I'm doing. So my focus is, well, how do I make sure my people can get to real estate and obtain it? So mentorship it's a huge thing. Yeah. And just feeling like you have a space to be like, okay, am I crazy? Or are we really dealing with like a lot of weirdness when it comes to helping minorities get financing? Right. And I say weirdness, but a lot of times it's challenges. Some challenges that come with that. So no, I'm big on mentorship.
What would you say are some of the challenges that when it comes to getting financing for minorities, especially?
I would say this. So on the our clients, our people. Hi, my people. How you doing? So I look directly at the camera.
Yes.
And I have to say this to you. Please do not wake up tomorrow and decide you want to buy a house if you have not taken the time to do the research first with a lender who is licensed and good at what they do. Hey, that's to my people. The way people were like, I want to buy a house. Do you have money saved? No. Have you looked at your credit in a year? No. How are you gonna buy a house? You gotta lay the foundation first and foremost. I'll guide you through it, but you don't pop up and be like, hey, I want to buy a house today. You ever looked at credit, haven't saved money? I'm going to tell you, we got to push this out by about 6 to 8 months. I'm sorry. If your lease is ending, renew it on a month to month, and then let's get to work. But from the other side of it, when it comes to working with your operations at different mortgage companies, and I've had a varied experiences from different companies, a lot of those challenges come from just cultural, like lack of cultural understanding. Yeah. Particularly when I'm dealing with my Caribbean or my African clients who like susus. I know what the susu is. I know what the benefit of a susu is.
Okay. You know about the susu folks?
My underwriter doesn't understand why you have a large sum of money being dropped into your bank account, right? Yeah. And then it's properly sourcing it. And I've been able to explain it and properly document it in order to assist those clients with getting homes. But imagine if I didn't exist to close that gap of information, right? Yeah. Then somebody who isn't culturally aware would completely fumble that, and now would be a client who can't buy a home. And so those are some of the challenges that come up when you have cultural nuances. And then sometimes it's just a lack of understanding how the market changes and how that changes the way lenders are going to do what they do, because it becomes a higher risk. Yeah. Like we're in a high rate market right now. We have an economy that is incredibly volatile. Yeah. So what happens in the lending world is it contracts. Yeah. It contracts, and it gets more concerned about how much risk are we taking on, and can people actually repay these mortgages? Which that's always the name of the game. Can you pay back this money we're lending you? Yeah. If you cannot, or we find that you are too much of a risk, we will not lend to you. Yeah. And it's hard to bridge hey, this is what a lender has to do by federal regulation. Here's the history of lending in America when it comes to Black and brown people. And then, hey, Black and brown people, I promise you this isn't a racist experience right now. This is me trying to tell you how you're going to be able to meet in the middle, how to meet the lending institution's requirements while still being able to get the benefit of a home and also better yourself financially. Yeah. And that's a hard place to navigate, especially now that we're in a more expensive and high rate market. So those are a lot of the challenges I'm coming to.
So it just sounds to me that not only that you're helping your client to navigate this water, right? But you're also really educating them about the process of like mortgage. Because I just feel like, again, I don't want to speak or a lot of the Black
Oh, I love
minority
it.
view. What are some myths? Like it seemed like when we hear the word mortgages, especially like you talk a lot about mentorship, but we also like you have a lot of first generations who are trying to be the first home buyers, right? Like if you don't have a family that will like really understand what home buying is, so this that already is a huge like, hurdle for you, right? So how do we get a lot of minority to really know more about mortgages and like what are some of the myths? Like if they want to start, like what's the first? I know you said they should do their homework, but what are some resources out there that they could like go directly to?
I don't want to say don't look at YouTube because it's hard.
Right.
It's hard to say that because there's so much information.
Mhm.
But when I say if you get with a lender, if you know somebody's in real estate,
Mhm.
and like, hey, who's a lender you use?
Yeah.
Can I get their information? Like
Mhm.
talk to a lender first. I love that everyone's excited. Social media is great, but there's too much misinformation out
Yep.
there, and there's not enough mortgage lenders who are active and producing, giving the information that needs to be given, and not in a soundbite, I want clicks, clickbait type of way.
Mhm.
Because right now, again, where we were in 2020 is not the same as where we are now.
Yeah.
And everyone, 2020, 2021, 2022, everyone's like so excited. Oh, I'm going to get a house, mortgage rates are low. And that's gone now, right?
Mhm.
So one of the hugest myths right now that I love to address is that everyone's like, oh, well, the housing market's the bubble's going to pop. There's no bubble. It's not popping. We're low on inventory. I got to be honest about that.
Mhm.
And when inventory is low, that means there are far more buyers than there are houses to buy. So no, that bubble is not happening. The property values are going to continue to go up. You need to prep and prepare yourself to buy. If you want to buy, you think you want to buy this year, then you need to be prepping to buy next year because you're already too late. You need to start. That's a huge thing that's happening right now.
Yep.
Because everyone's expecting, oh, it's 2008. It's going to be a housing bubble. We're good. Foreclosures are going to hit. All of these things. And I'm just like, that's not the data is not coming through in the way that you think.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're seeing that foreclosures are up right now, yes, because there wasn't a moratorium where you couldn't do foreclosures throughout the pandemic.
Yeah.
That's up now. So now the folk who did the forbearances on their mortgages but didn't have an exit strategy, now those homes are going to foreclosure, but it's still not enough. It's not enough homes to close the gap in inventory, right? So those are some of the myths that are happening. Or my favorite is, oh, I don't have to have any money for closing if I'm getting grants. No, you need money.
Yeah.
You still have to have your own money, even if you're getting grant funding. You have to. You have to have something in the bank saved, at least, 3 to 6 months of your mortgage payment sitting in the bank or sitting in a retirement fund, because underwriters, which are the people who say yes or no to your mortgage, are looking to make sure that if we have another pandemic, you can pay the mortgage and not go into foreclosure, because everyone loses at that point. The lender loses, which is a huge no. Anyone who was on that deal and the file goes into foreclosure, that's a huge no. And then you as the client, you are at risk now of losing your home. I don't want you to lose your home. I want to educate you to stay in the home. That's the point, is retaining the real estate. So those are big myths right now, that I don't need money if I have grants. Yes, you do. Please save your money. Please have money in your bank account. Check your retirement. That's really important, because that does count as money that you have saved. And then stop waiting on a housing bubble pop. It's not happening. It's not happening. The rates are going to readjust. They are going to come down a little bit. But understand what that means is that everyone who couldn't buy right now because the rates are high are going to now want to buy. And that means you still don't have enough homes to purchase. So there's no housing bubble. So those are two major things that I come up currently in this market, and always, to be honest. And then my last thing is, we need to have real conversations about finances. We need to stop being so hush-hush about our money and stop thinking, hey, if you know how much money I make, and that's a huge thing in our culture, we don't like to talk about money.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Liz. Can I push you to expand on that? Why do we need to have these conversations? Like, and then you also tie it to the culture. And I know these in a sense, like African culture, some things are like on the hush hush, right? And like kind of figure this out on your own. But like money becomes a big thing. Like finance is a big deal, and sometimes I feel like the culture getting away. Can you elaborate on this more? Because I just feel like this is something that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
Listen, I have family fighting who's fought over houses. I'm so sorry, but they have because someone didn't have their documentation together.
Yep.
So one person passes. Now you got a deed that's floating around somewhere because no one decided to get this in order before they passed. One, I think, is just we struggle with the idea that we are going to die.
Yeah.
We struggle with that as human beings. So then there's a lack of preparation there because somehow we don't remember you are going to age. You are going to have to set up and get your affairs in order. Then the other part is we're so guarded about our resources. And I think personally, my opinion on this, because of how much we've had taken from us culturally, we're very tight about what resources we have and who has access to them. And I don't want anyone else to take anything from me.
Right.
But with that, now your children don't understand the importance of investing or saving or how credit works.
Yeah.
We don't have a full understanding of, maybe if you talked more about where you failed financially, I can learn from you about what things I shouldn't do. So culturally, it's just such a tight-lipped conversation. Like even to this day with my own mom, she's just like, well, I don't need people to know how much money I make. I understand you don't want someone to ask you to take money or, hey, can you give or I'm struggling. Can you help me? We know we have those family members, but also I would have enjoyed having a much more detailed conversation about your finances before you got to retirement age, so that I would know how to properly assess the next steps on any real estate that you own, what my brother and I are entitled to, what supports are there if you fall ill and we have to put, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All of that. And all of that gets missed because you don't want people in your business.
Yep.
You don't want people, speaking ill about you and your money, because you might be bragging and, we all know evil eye and a lot of family members.
And I'm just saying we need to have these conversations because I feel like, again, like I'm limited to my experience, but like I feel like the Caribbean, the African culture, it's a lot of like, let me just push this aside. And, I'm going to be doing it on my own. But then you also have family members like who continue to rely on you when it comes to those things where like asking you for, but then you realize like financially, like these things matters. And also like I try to have these conversations with like family members. Like you had a conversation with your mom. I try to have the same conversation with my dad, but I got to push back. I'm like,
my mom gives me very full pushback. Let me be very, very clear. It's repetitive.
So it's like I said, it's just, but you still want to be loving. But I think it's a conversation that needs to have because it matters. Like we hit these stages in our life, and you realize like if you haven't had this conversation within your family, or your mom and dad didn't have this conversation with you. And then you get to a certain age, and then that starts translating to your relationship as well. If you meet that one that starts talking about like, well, how much you make, you kind of like, why are you talking about finance and stuff like that? And then you jump to marriage, and boom.
But I need to know that.
And that's the number one, when it comes to disputes and challenges across, relationships, it's finances.
But I just think we need to get to the point where we're comfortable having these conversations and knowing that these conversations are a central aspect of like every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
Listen, the amount of conversations about property successions, what the next steps are, when I even putting a will together, and I'm just like, okay, I need a break. It's been a journey. There's certain things that still haven't been done. I can be very transparent about that, to the point where I'm kind of doing. At this point, I'm kind of like just watching, and when certain things happen, I'm like, so you ready to do X, Y, and Z now? And then it'll be like, okay, yeah, we should probably do that. Okay, are you ready to do this next part? And they're like, no, we don't. Okay, that's fine. Let's just do this one part first. And I'm slowly whittling the situation down because it's the reality of, again, we don't think we're going to age. Our parents
do you feel like that's cut you off? Do you feel like that's a cultural thing? Because when it comes to mortality, of course, it's also a human thing, right? But it feels different within our communities than it does within other communities when it comes to conversations around things like your will and your end of life care and things of that nature?
I think it's a level of control. Because you have to remember, like elders have a struggle. And I had this conversation with a girl from whose family's from the South. Elders struggle with turning over power because they've been in charge for so long. Like to actually relinquish their own agency is where they struggle. That's what I'm recognizing. Like as I told you, like I'm
that's a jam.
caretaker. Yeah, I'm caretaking with my dad, and
go ahead, Liv. Let them know.
It's the letting go of agency, and so it's trying to find a happy medium where, listen, you are still very much so a full adult, but also I am now a full adult. And I also now have to navigate certain things within this relationship dynamic that I have to take over because you are not able to manage. It does not mean you are not intelligent. It does not mean you do not still have decision-making capabilities when it comes to your day-to-day, but it does mean certain things you no longer need to be the point person for. And I think that's a huge thing to ask Black people, one, elder Black people, two, and then three, toss in that immigrant standpoint where everything is rules, structure. You do this, do as I say, not as I do. These are the rules, and I'm, you know what I mean? Where you don't really. To be American for me, and my parents will always say you're more American. To be American and the way in which I have to navigate with them has always been a challenge because you don't do that, especially when you are raised overseas and you come up. Some things you don't do. But there's a certain leverage I have at this point to be able to say, hey, I hear you, I respect you, but now this is a hard boundary. If you want me to be responsible for these things, you have to let me be responsible for these things, and you have to allow me to actually take them over. I will still keep you in the know. But you can no longer primarily manage this. And I think that the reason why it's such a cultural issue is, again, we're just now getting to a point where a lot of us are having. A lot of our parents grew up humble, meager. They didn't have a lot. They were sharing 2-3 cots in a room, oldest one on one top, maybe if God forbid one wets the bed, everyone's getting a shower. You know what I mean? So that's how they grew up. 1 room house. That's it. And then you build from there. So for a lot of them to come to America and to be able to have success and build wealth in any way, shape, or form, and do that without a lot of guidance, I get it. But then now you have your kids who have picked up a little bit faster, who are more knowledgeable, are having conversations with their peers about finances, investments, and it's just like, well, why aren't we having these conversations? And now it's kind of like you're challenging everything that they did to get you here.
But again, I'm so happy we're having these conversations. Thank you again, Liz, for honestly, for really bringing up these difficult conversations. Because it also gets to the point where I just feel like there's just this financial dependency on you. There's this expectation as an immigrant, like we brought you in this country, we put you in the school, and now we expecting you to like
the retirement plan.
You the retirement plan. But also, like, you also get exhausted to the point where, like, this makes no sense. And then they start having this, it deteriorates the relationship. There's a sense of loss of trust. Because now you start thinking, like, okay, I am really thriving because I have a budget or I have 2 jobs, right? And then on a superficial level, it looks like I'm doing well. Like, all your family members look like you don't complain and you don't do well. However, like, you literally have some sort of disciplining systems in place that allow you to live this life that you do.
Yes.
But like when you, then you start to wonder like, okay, I'll support you financially for a year or 2, but this can't continue. And the moment you set those boundaries,
now you are the bad guy.
Now you're on your own island,
you
right?
Are ungrateful. So, you don't care.
Right.
Man, that guilt trip goes long. It's like, well, wait a minute. And it's hard because you look at your parents who are not in the same cultural situation, right?
Yes.
And there's so many things that play into this, but you're looking at them and they're like, yes, they have a lot of their obligations too, but their family did things to set them up in a way where they are not the retirement plan. And I think the challenge for our culture is, and that's just across the diaspora, again, it's because we come from histories of not having and restriction and having to build and scrape together, is that you literally had to lean on your family to kind of float you. I have plenty of friends who, my dad first came here, he lived with family first, you know what I mean? Before he could move out on his own and get himself settled. People funnel you into jobs and things like that. So I get it, but if again, and therapy is so important for this part. It's the boundaries you have to create as the younger generation
Yep.
in order to say, this is the limit of what I can do. Here's how I can advise, but I can't bail you out because I am 2 to 3 months close to being back in a position where I can't financially sustain. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even with having, buying the real estate, having the good paying job, saving the money, having the investments, I'm also having to survive in this exact same environment and also trying to pave my own path.
Right.
So I if there is no like plan or pool of money somewhere where we can all just kind of pull from that's been set aside, I cannot overextend myself to help you because I'm going to drown trying to help keep you afloat. And I have far more years ahead of me. I gotta do something else. It's not fair. And I know my parents did it. My mom did it with her family. So I get it. It's that obligation. You feel like you owe it, but at the same time, how am I supposed to survive?
Yeah.
What?
I'm literally trying to make it. This economy's crazy. America's a little nuts right now. I can't support you and support me in health. I gotta talk about it. I'm a woman and I'm also single. So I don't got a 2-income household. This is me.
And they kill you with taxes.
Listen,
I have to drop that in there
this
too.
is why you gotta buy real estate. So you can have a tax write-offs. Okay. Listen, you talk about the taxes, man.
I just had to say that the tax season is coming up.
The one
And you
thing,
realize it's not easy.
It's not. And the one thing I'm grateful for is that I have a little real estate to help me with the write-offs. But Lord, I gotta adopt a kid.
Yeah.
A kid. I'm joking. I'm not joking.
Wait, I missed that last part.
So I gotta adopt a kid.
Oh.
I'm joking, but I'm not joking. It's just like, we need to find somebody to make an arrangement. Like, hey, listen, let's just get married for a couple of years while we ride out this recession. I'm kidding. CFPB, if you're listening, I'm kidding.
And the recession is real.
I'm sure you most likely will get some candidate after this show.
DMs are open.
The DMs are open for mortgages and for dates. But, if you rather the mortgage, that's fine. If you
but you have to get vetted. You have to get vetted.
You do.
You have to make sure.
Listen, I
got your finances right.
My life is in as order as it can be, and it's crazy to say that because I not to segue to dating, but I do find it important when we talk about finances.
Yeah.
So when the one time I probably should not have been dating was when I was in transition between mortgages, deciding not go back to medical school, trying to get my finances in order very early in my mortgage career, because that's also a journey of adjusting to the climates of corporate America from medical school, which, to be very fair, their medicine and corporate America are not that different. They're actually very, very similar. But I remember dating, the run of the joke is not the joke, but the constant thing is, women date up, right? Date a man who makes more money. Highly not recommended if he's okay. Sorry. And if he hasn't gone to therapy, you gotta have some questions.
No, it's real.
Yeah, but people say to date up, but I'm a huge fan of no one should be dating when you're not financially in a place to sustain.
Yes.
The amount of things you cannot do, the conversations you should be having about finances, especially if that relationship's new, you don't know if you're gonna get married. There's too many nuances there. So I'll say to men and women, if you feel like you're not in a good financial spot, just hold off. Hold off on the dating. Take that money that you're going to spend on eggs in the morning for breakfast, and it's very expensive now. Put that money in a pot.
Yep.
Don't talk to a therapist if you need to. Work on the personal things. Get a habit and discipline together, because I can really say that now. It's like, girl, what were you even thinking? You are broke. broke. And you are hustling every day to get deals. But you broke, child. Why are you dating? And it was nice. And he wasn't a good person, but that's neither here nor there.
That's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast. But it's just
it's the Pepper Soup Talk Show.
That's fine. I just like to say from a financial standpoint and getting yourself together. Like, I also think culturally, it's just, I think everyone needs to think about being able to have their own financial foundation. Yeah. And I find that to be important because, at least here, I can't speak for every economy across the world. America is not a place where you can have a single household, a single income household. It is not. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I'm so serious. Like both people need to be bringing in some income just based on how the country is set up economically. And that's, so like from a culture standpoint,
I'm looking at Aki. Aki's looking at me. I'm like, well,
y'all like, no,
go ahead. We're going to let you go ahead. Go ahead. We're going to let you elaborate.
I'm just saying it's
Is
the cost of living is going up. The
Yes.
cost of real estate is going up. If you decide you want to have children, that's expensive. And then when we're talking about building generational wealth, you got to be realistic about, can you really survive in a household with one income? There's got to be at least two. That's my opinion based on where we are economically.
honestly, I just don't think,
helps, man. It helps.
I don't, again, if you're blessed and you are making 6-figure above, happy for you.
You need to be a strong 6 figures right now.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, oh, I'm 100K.
Especially in
certain
you need a side
cities
job.
also, like, depending on the city you're in. You making 6 figures in San Francisco. You might as well, be in poverty.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just think this is what, like, a lot of us too, our generation are pushing a lot of things back, whether that is like, getting married and having kids. A lot of us are having kids late, like 30s. And there's a reason for that, right? Because again, we try to avoid this cycle. But and then some of us are also like are literally going through the struggle, but we still feel like we have to like, abide by the societal expectation. You're a certain age, you're 30, you should get married, you should have kids. But I'm just happy that we're having these conversations, because these conversations get lost into translations.
Listen, tell mom and auntie and TT and all of them, you are not. Listen, I have this conversation often. My auntie's like, so you're not having kids? I was like, who has kid money? You got kid money? Because that's it. That's a full-time job. That's a whole nother shift in dynamic.
Absolutely.
And you're now responsible for guiding a whole nother person's life. And I'm grateful for my parents, very much so. But when you take a moment to reflect on watching your family members and how they raise and finances and how that plays in the part, that's ghetto. I'm good. I'm good on that one at this point in time. I was like, there's certain things that just have to be in place. And, kids bring another dynamic that even dictates where you buy your real estate. That dictates if you're looking for a forever home or investment property, it changes how you're able to navigate. So you got to be a little bit more intentional about your next moves when it comes to family building and wealth building and how and what you're bringing into the household. And don't get me wrong, I mean, single Black women are leading the purchases right now in real estate because we're hustling. But I also know a lot of my mamas is tired.
They're all tired. They're tired.
They're tired. So I love what that shows the children. I love how I love everything about it. I would never do it because I am a single woman who bought real estate, you know what I mean? And getting it done. But also at the same time, someone can help me pay these bills. Or I want to be able to get to that next deal sooner. And it would be easier with additional income. So no, you're not. I don't think you should be out here with a single income household.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I just think this conversation is really what we all need to hear.
Necessary.
Right now. So, Liz, you touch a little bit on this about this idea of wealth building with owning a home, and it also that affect the person's like mental health as well, or like the family dynamic as well. Why do you think owning a property is really like this first step of building wealth? Can you elaborate on that? Because I just feel like this, again, we just want our readers to understand, but it's also this part, like when you receive this message about like, hey, I need to buy a property so I can start building wealth. But let's talk to the second phase about like what this process looks like, like how do you plan ahead? What do you should start doing? Like, I just want to make sure like our readers understand.
No, absolutely. So being a mortgage lender, I talk to clients a lot about the process of getting ready to buy a home. And I always ask the question, what's your timeline? That's super important. Some clients come with a more urgent timeline than others. And then that kind of puts a different level of pressure on things, meaning, hey, you need to have certain things in place, like a certain amount of money saved, as I mentioned earlier. Your credit needs to be at a certain level as well. You need to have a certain amount of income to be able to qualify. Because if you again, if you cannot pay back the loan and I cannot show that you can pay back the loan along with paying your other debts, it's going to be difficult to get you pre-approved for a mortgage. So the first process is always taking inventory. How much money are you bringing in gross versus how much debts you have coming out monthly? Because that's what I'm going to look at. But I always tell my clients, take it a step further. You live on net.
Yeah.
I qualify on gross. I qualify for your mortgage on what your salary says, right?
Yeah.
But you live on what Uncle Sam gives you after he takes his cut. So then the question becomes, if I put you in this house, are you going to be house poor? Can't be. So now you have to look at your income, look at what your expenses are, and then now you need to look at if you're even able to save.
Yeah.
And if you're not able to save and you want to buy a house, we have a problem, a huge one, right? So now we got to get your savings up, which is why I tell all my folks, please file your tax returns early and save them. If you know your credit's in a good spot. If your credit's not in a good spot and you need to pay debts down, then that tax return should be paying down your debts. Okay, so please write that down. I had to make eye contact.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm ready.
Oh, I know.
I can't prepare. I can't.
So those are the major parts of just when I'm assessing a file, like, hey, what's saved? Where's your income? Where's your credit? I know there's a lot of information out there about, hey, I can get a mortgage with a 580 credit score. No, you cannot. I mean, let me be a little bit more less inflammatory and clickbaity. I'm sorry. You can get a mortgage with a 580. It is going to cost you almost 3 times as much as somebody who has a 620.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that?
So the way credit works and the way credit is assessed, interest rates, which everyone's crazy about, right? Interest rates are high, interest rates are high, interest rates are low. The lower your credit score, the higher the interest rate you're going to be assigned because of the fact that it costs you less money to have the higher interest rate because your credit score is low. So when I look at a low credit score and I'm trying to price it out to see what I can get you pre-qualified for, I'm always going to have to look at the higher rate because it costs you less money to have it. The higher your credit score, often I can get you a lower rate and it won't cost you as much money. That's typically how that works generally in lending. The challenge of this market is we're in a high rate market. So even though you may have a higher credit score, it's still going to be probably a higher interest rate because it's just more expensive to get a mortgage right now. So imagine if in 2020, right, height of the pandemic, everything going on, 2020, if somebody said, hey, you know what? I have a 630. Oh, I can get myself a 4%, right? Or maybe a 3.5. Let's say I can get me a 3.5 interest rate. Cool. Maybe that'll cost me $7,000.
Yeah.
Versus someone with a 580. Yeah, you're probably going to have to get that 4.5, maybe a 5, even though the market's low, because you have a 580 and it's going to cost you about $7,000 to $8,000 to have a 5, 4.5 or 5 at a 580 credit score. But also now you have higher interest.
Right.
You probably have to put down 10% instead of maybe 3.5% because you are a higher risk. The higher of a risk you are credit-wise, the more expensive it is for you to actually get money lent to you, right? So as much as I know they say FHA loans go down at 580, I hear you. Unless you are a divorcee who has a 6-figure job and you have lots of money sitting in the bank, you are not closing on a mortgage with a 580 credit score. Those are very, very specific scenarios. Very rarely do I get a client through who's under a 600 credit score through with the mortgage. So understand the risk. You are a lending risk. So the higher your credit score, the less of a risk you are. The higher your savings, the less of a risk you are. Something called debt to income, which is when we assess how much debts you have monthly divided by your gross monthly income. The lower your debt to income ratio, the less of a risk you are. Those are just the foundations of lending for anything. You see, for car notes, credit cards, all of it, right? But mortgages, the benefit of having real estate and why that's such a great wealth builder is you now control your housing expense. So no, you're no longer renting. You're no longer subject to rent increases. You know what your mortgage is going to be roughly for about the next, let's say 7 years, because property taxes could go up, right?
Yeah.
So now you have a consistent monthly housing payment. So now you can properly budget around other things that you have. You also have something called equity. And you build equity as you own, which means as your home appreciates, you're gaining something called the difference between what it's worth and what you owe. So I have plenty of clients who bought in 2018. The minute the market hit that low in 2020, some of the clients who bought homes at like, oh, I bought my home at 185, it's now worth 250. They have a great amount of equity they can use to take money out from, pay off their debt, send their kids to college, pay for a wedding, instead of taking out another loan. Now everything's just tied to the house. Your house becomes your personal bank. Because you can use the equity you've built from appreciation through value increase and use that to pay down other debts, pay off those high APR credit cards a lot of us have, right? And still be able to make your mortgage payment reasonable. And you don't have to stress about, okay, is the landlord going to come kick me out? Did they repair this thing? Now you're responsible for your repairs, but you get my point. You're no longer at the whims of a landlord or the rental market, which we're seeing happening now. That's where wealth comes in, because also if I have equity in a property, maybe I don't have any debt to pay off, but I can now use that equity to take out the money and I can buy myself an investment in cash. And cash is king. So now I have, from one home, I now have 2 properties. That's how that wealth building comes about. If you properly use the tools to leverage and have good conversations, because I have a gripe with some of the investment information that's been going around a lot about lines of credit, and I only know maybe 2 to 3 investors who do it right, but people are too hungry to get the wealth without the proper application of information. So you're going to see a lot of folk who are overextended on their investments because they didn't understand exit strategy. And so they kept going for quick instead of for long game. And I'm very big as a lender, plan your long game properly and understand how to exit out of things like business lines of credit that you've tapped. You replenish that quickly and leave it alone and let it sit. Because again, market it's volatile. And banks are going to start pulling in and saying, you're not going to be getting those lines of credit as quickly. Not unless you have, you're well into the 700s. I'm sure some people have seen it now, but that's what I'm watching. Did I answer the questions?
No, you did.
Okay.
You did. I'm sorry.
It's the financial literacy for me.
No, it is. It is. And it's just like, these are complex sort of like questions to answers. And I just think you really, the way you just broke this down.
You really distilled that.
It's like really, and I hope like it resonate with our listeners.
Because I'm like, this is what I do. I try to make it as simple as possible. Because it's complex in thought. It really isn't as like an application is not as complex as you think. As long as you understand the risk, and then you also understand, again, playing that long game. Too many people get caught up in trying to do too many plays, and you're overextended, and we're just finally getting to a space where we're able to like buy the properties, right? But we're also still struggling. Like culturally, the housing gap for Black families is still it's lowered.
Right.
There were more people buying homes in like the 50s and 60s than we're buying now. There's so many of us who actually are qualified to buy homes. We're scared to do it, or we don't know where to start. And so I'm just like, I'm here. I'm a resource.
Education.
You may not use me as your lender. I hope you will, though. You may not, but come get this information so you know the next steps. Because at this point, we gotta close this gap. There's too many of us. We gotta close the gap.
Right, especially like in Philly, right? Philly being one of the city with about 45% of the population is Black.
It's Black.
But I don't even know the percentage. How many percent of Black folks owns property?
I don't know about her. But
interestingly, in Philly, and this is to the point that you're making earlier, a lot of people in Philly have owned their properties or had their properties handed down to them from, it's like legacy. And a lot of people also had those properties either taken away
Fumbled.
or, basically fumbled it, but from a lack of necessarily not knowing
The paperwork.
what
Not
to
paperwork,
do.
Mhm.
Not knowing if there's a reverse mortgage on it from
Right.
like grandmom.
Right. Property taxes too.
Property taxes going up. So there's, don't get me on a soapbox. That's like the biggest robbery ever is raising property taxes on elderly, on those who are elderly and expecting them, they're on a fixed income and then taking it from them. There's so much history that's a little messy with Philly when it comes to that. And it's not just Philly. Every city I've lived in Camden, lived in Baltimore. I'm from Prince George's County, Maryland. Like you just being in DC in the area, you watch the history and it just kind of repeats itself where you are forcing some of the communities that built that city out in order for development. And yes, you start later on. I was like, oh yeah, we have all these incentives, but you haven't closed the gap nearly enough to incentivize and get us back into these homes. So the property taxes going up and those going unpaid because I was like, oh, well, I don't have a mortgage. But you have property taxes to pay. The minute you don't pay that your house can be taken from you, right? A lot of us don't know that. A lot of elders don't know that. The reverse mortgages that have to be paid off because someone's like, oh, well, I just want to be paid from my home now. I'm not working. Again, another thing, the house goes into probate because you didn't necessarily have proper documentation about who's supposed to take over the property. Either that you have entangled titles because you didn't get one person off, or hey, my uncle's been in this house for so many years, but it's still in grandma's name. Grandma been dead for over 30. Do you know what I mean? All of these things that are happening because of, again, the lack of conversation, the lack of transparency about finances and real estate. And honestly, a lot of the boomers didn't talk to their kids about it. And some of the kids weren't really checking for it either, to be quite honest with you. So that's really where like our work really isn't done just yet. The focus has to be on we got to be able to save these properties and maintain them because again you lose it goes to an investor or it goes to whoever. They don't really they just want to flip the house and rent it. And
then also to the point of just property in general right now, like you talk about how there isn't really necessarily a bubble or whatever the case may be on the way. And so property values is going to continue to get harder and harder to be able to afford to buy property as time goes on. And so that's why, sort of like the sooner the better to be able to get your ducks in a row.
Please. I mean, if there are any developers or people who are friends with developers on this conversation, talk to me, please, about, creating affordable housing, because that's also a thing that at some point we have to be able to control this. You know what I mean? I had the pleasure of going to Atlanta for a work event. We had something called Grab the Key. We had one in Philly last July. And Grab the Key is focused on closing the Black homeownership gap. My joy is I got to meet with a developer who made affordable tiny homes in Atlanta. First Black affordable tiny home development.
Shout out to him.
Shout out to him. I cannot think of his name right now, but my colleague Pauline Harris, she's the girl down there. Okay, ATL Mortgage Queen. Follow her. I like her. But he said something so incredibly important during that presentation about, he's like, well, I bought the land and I'll just set the price wherever I want it. If there's an issue with someone trying to be able to afford the house, cool, I'll figure out what to charge. And that is such a power play as a Black developer making affordable tiny home development, the first affordable tiny home development in Atlanta, Georgia, bought the land, created the units, said, I will figure out how to make this work for the buyer. That needs to be like a real conversation amongst those of us who have a certain level of income, education, access, development wise. We need to really start having a conversation about, what affordable developments can we create? How can we start to control how we're charging and what we're charging? Gotta start thinking about that now. Because they're not making any more land. This is all we got. Right. So if you can snag a piece, please snag a piece, call me. But also, if we can start pulling our resources and our wisdom to figure out where can we purchase land, how can we get it financed. My company does have a program as well, shameless plug, so that we are actually able to control what we charge.
And that also changed the narrative.
It does. It does. So now it doesn't become this unattainable goal. It becomes all right, there's a space where I can purchase and there are resources that I can tap.
Right.
And there are some developers in the city who are doing affordable housing as well. So I'm connected with them as well. But the conversation needs to be happening more, because as we continue to progress, as homes continue to get bought and price points go up, they're not trying to put a cap on housing prices,
Yeah. So it's all about well, I hope like our listeners really I know I took some notes, so thank you. Thank you, Liz, for sharing your experience and knowledge with us, and I know like a lot of our listeners will also enjoy the knowledge that you have shared with us today.
I hope so.
We get sort of close to the home stretch here, but like where can people continue to really learn from you or hear about your experience and your work?
So you can absolutely follow me on Instagram, medicine, the number 2 mortgages. That's the number 1 place to find me, to be quite honest. I have a Facebook page. It's my name, Elizabeth Parris, NMLS 1511086. That's the official Facebook page. But again, if you want to catch me, Instagram is where it's going to be. That's where I put up most posts, put up information. You can always find a link and set up an appointment with me as well to do a consult. I'm in and around Philly. I'm doing events. I'm collaborating with different realtors and just, trying to get the information in front of people and be a little bit more personable.
And then you basically you based in Philly. Is there any other city that you like?
I am based in Philly, but I'm licensed in about 11 states. So I'm licensed in PA, New Jersey, Delaware.
You say that one more time. We start calling you the medicine mortgage queen. That's some boss stuff, right? Licensed in how many states?
About 11 states. Yes.
I just wanted to make sure, like we have to.
No, we're clear.
Get that across the board. That's powerful.
I'm working on a couple more, but a little slow time right now. But licensed in California, licensed in Illinois, licensed in Michigan. I'm licensed in Georgia, licensed in Virginia, Delaware, New Jersey, PA. Did I say Maryland? Did I get that? Okay.
Talk heavy.
I lied. So it's not. No, Virginia. Did I get Virginia? Bear with me. I'm licensed in quite a few places. Yep. I'm licensed wherever I have alumni connections.
Okay.
So I don't waste that. I don't waste no time. I got folk out in Cali. I got folk in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I got folk all the way down to Georgia. Oh, I'm licensed in Georgia. I forgot that. So there we go. Yeah.
Man, no, thank you for sharing that. And before we close out, we got a few lighthearted questions for you.
Sure.
One question we like to ask our guests is, you're on the Pepper Soup Talk Show. And we always like to ask, what your favorite jollof rice is.
Actually, which country? Push the button a little bit. That's a nice way.
Country,
that's a nice way to ask the question. I keep
which country makes the best jollof rice?
I'm trying to figure out if I can backpedal out of this the best way I can. So technically, I am vegan. So we're clear. Now I have had jollof rice. I know you can do vegan jollof rice. So don't get me wrong.
Okay, great.
Okay. Awesome. I've been vegan for 4 years. So I mean, if my memory serves me right. Niger.
Okay.
I have heard, some good contenders at Ghana. Senegal has actually come into the chat recently.
Yeah.
So
all I'm saying is Senegal has been nominated. To make the best jollof rice, but again.
Right. I'm going to go with my Niger folk, Niger done, Niger no carry last.
All right.
I was speaking to this guy the other day from Burkina Faso. Apparently, they make jollof rice too. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. That was news to me.
I'm learning a lot today.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm sorry for all my Ghana clients.
No, it's all right. It's all right. Again, it's so today we'll say that Naja
Jollof for the day
has prevailed. All right, we'll go ahead and keep tallying because at the end of the year we want to see which country, based on the guests that we have, will has the most vote. I think so far is I think Nigeria's up.
Yeah, Nigeria and Ghana are,
it's always a little bit of East Coast, West Coast for y'all on that one.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Listen, if somebody wants to make me some vegan jollof from Ghana or from Nigeria or from Senegal, please, I eat.
What?
I like food.
And then the last question that I have, is there anyone that you want to give a shout out to on the show?
Oh man, that's a heavy question to ask because I'll get in trouble for that one too. Um, you know what? I want to give a shout out to dang, name escapes me. So I can't name escapes me at the moment, but one of my mentors actually. She worked in sales at Freedom. Her name was Lisa. I can't remember her last name right now. Lisa was a boss. She was a boss Italian lady who always give me like a good encouraging word. So shout out to Lisa. I can't remember your last name. I apologize. It's been about 7 years. My brain is melting. But shout out to her. That was a white lady I rock with. She was ballsy. Let me tell you, that woman could sell something. Okay.
This is my final question. If you had to give some advice to the younger Liz, just given where you started and where you are now, what advice would you give her for the journey that she will go on, the ups and the downs, and how she could best navigate get into the present day?
I would definitely tell my younger self, like, you are enough. You are enough. I think we struggle a lot culturally with self-doubt in a lot of ways, especially when we don't hit what we think we're supposed to hit to make everybody else proud. So that's my number one thing. Like, yo, you are enough. Like, you got it, sis. You are enough. That's it. Move forward.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah,
appreciate you for coming on our talk show.
Definitely.
Thank you. It's a great way to close it out. So again, we just had another great episode with Liz Parris. Did I pronounce it right?
You got it.
All right. Again, just keep following us. We always love to have an amazing guest like Liv on the talk show. If you love what we do, or if you love listening to our podcast, please help us spread the word. Go on YouTube. We are like all the podcast outlet space. We're on Spotify, Apple. Also, leave us a comment because, we can only get better based on your interactions and feedback. So thank you for tuning in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.